Alright, today I want to talk about my 2008 R1, which I recently bought. Did a little bit of work on it, bought it a few months ago, did work, cleaned it up a bit, and now I'm just going to give you my impressions. It's the first liter bike I've ever owned, so I'm going to tell you a bit about how I feel the bike is, you know, what it's like to ride a liter bike as well. So yeah, welcome to my channel where we talk about bikes and Bible verses. I'm going to be talking about what I think about this bike. Also at the end, I'm going to show a Bible verse as usual. So the first thing I want to talk about is whether you think you can handle a liter bike or an R1 or, you know, anything like that, 1000cc, because that's a topic that a lot of people talk about. And I want to say that there's two facets to how you should approach that. One is if you're a learner, like if you are new to riding, then the problems you can have with a bike like this is, one, it's big, it's a pretty big bike to handle, and two, it's really fast. So if you make mistakes with you know, your throttle control, which happens a lot when you're a new rider, if you make mistakes with that, then there's not much forgiveness, because there's a lot of power at the throttle. The other thing about this bike, which is not good for learners, is you can't really control the speed below 40 kilometers an hour. I don't know how much that, I think that's like 25 miles or something. You can't control it because, I mean, you can, but it has to be with the clutch. You can't control it like just with the throttle, because the gearing is so high. You know, first gear on this bike can go up to 160 kilometers. That's 100 miles, right? So when you're learning, you want that slow speed stuff. Also, because this bike is so fast, it's got a lot of speed, that could get learners in trouble, because they, I mean, not just learners, even experienced riders, they end up going faster than their capability, you know. There's a lot of people who ask me and say, oh, I want to ride, I want to see if I can handle it, and this and that. You know, and then I ask them, okay, how do you turn a motorcycle? And they're like, oh, you know, and they can't answer. They don't understand concepts of counter steering. You know, it's not just a problem for learners, but also experienced riders. This bike can get you into speeds that you can't really handle. The other thing with owning a liter bike or 1000cc, you know, things like, you know, wheeling. If you do a wheelie, but you don't really know how to properly do a wheelie, so with this bike you just pull the throttle and it'll wheelie. But even if you don't know how to do it properly, you can still do one, and that's a problem. You need to first learn how to properly do one, you know, the proper clutch up techniques, things like that, proper techniques where you know you can wheelie almost any bike. That's sort of when you know how to wheelie properly. The other thing about this bike is not just that it's fast, it also just wants you to go fast. So it's not just, you know, it's a fast bike but you can ride it slow, but it like tempts you to want to ride it fast. So the way I can describe it is like a jet engine, right? Like a plane, you know, where, you know how it's just taxiing on the runway. You know that it's not giving it what it's supposed to be doing, and that's what this bike is like at street legal speeds. So if I'm doing, you know, 60, 80, 100, it feels like I'm just taxiing on the runway. Like, you know that it can take off. You know that it's not doing what it's meant to be doing. You know, that was like 20% throttle, and I didn't go nowhere near what this bike's capable of. And so that's the thing about owning a bike like this, is it will tempt you to speed. And you know, riding around on the street, you need to just have discipline. You need to have the discipline to just ride normal speed limits. You know, this thing only gets started at around 180 kilometers an hour. That's when it really gets started into what it can do. And you don't want to be going that speeds on the street. Like, no matter how good of a rider you are, you cannot ride around safely on the streets that have been designed for those limits. The other things about this bike is, like, comfort wise, I found it pretty comfortable. Like, I'm quite used to riding. It's like a 600, which I'm fairly comfortable with. Of course, when you first ride a bike, it's uncomfortable for the first, I guess, couple of weeks until you get used to it. It's not as bad or as harsh as my Daytona, which was pretty hard to ride around on the streets, you know, when you're first getting used to it. Of course, every bike that you ride, you get used to it if you ride it for more than a couple of weeks. You know, which is kind of why I don't agree with the whole idea of test rides at dealerships and stuff. There's no way you can figure out. Every bike is uncomfortable when you first ride it, for the first, you know, day, second days, weeks. So I kind of see that it's pointless. If you want to try out other bikes, if you want to try something, if it's good for you, you know, get something second hand, good price, you know, something that you won't lose resale value on. Ride it around for 3 to 4 months. If you really don't like it after that, then you can just sell it and probably not even lose any money. Yeah, so this bike is like any other 600 that you ride. It's maybe just a little bit heavier, just a tad. You can feel the weight, but it's not much. It's only like maybe 10 kilos heavier than you know, the typical 600. The other thing I noticed about this bike is there's a lot of heat that comes off it. You know, people complain about that on CBR 600s. I had a 2007 600, and that wasn't as bad as this. This bike is pretty. There's a lot of heat coming off it. It'll make a really good winter bike. You know, it'll keep you warm when you're riding. Other issues with this bike, which I guess I was warned when I took it in to do the registration, is that the magnets for the Stator, like for the charging system, tend to fall off the bell housing. So it's like the housing of the Stator has magnets on it, and they're like glued on, epoxied on, and they are known to fall off. And big damage happens when they fall off and go into the Stator and even into the engine. So I'm gonna take the bell housing off. Like, I read enough online to kind of be scared, and I'll take it off and I'll check, because you can see the one with the problem. Like, Yamaha made an updated part to overcome that problem, and you can see the difference. Like, the one with the problem, you can see the magnets, and then the one where they fixed it is like they're covered, so it's just like a cylinder. You can just see the cylinder thing. So we'll just end with a Bible verse. and that's from Mark chapter 2 verse 16 and 17, and it's where the Pharisees are accusing Jesus, or pointing out that Jesus is hanging out with sinners, and then Jesus says that it's not the healthy people who go to a doctor, it's the sick people who go to a doctor. And I want to point out with that verse is a lot of Christians, I think, explain it wrong, or they mislead the meaning. They're like, they tap into other doctrines, and they're like, oh, we're all sinners, everyone's a sinner, everyone's, you know, they just shut it down and say everyone's a sinner, so just give up. And I don't like the way that Christians handle that. Rather, we should acknowledge what Jesus is saying. You know, the sick come to the doctor. We're all sick in a way in terms of sin, and we need to come to Jesus so that he can make us healthy. And that's the part that I think a lot of people miss, is the part of overcoming your sickness, overcoming your sin, and I think that's the most important part. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about. So that's my thoughts on the bike. So yeah, if you like this video, hit the like button, make a comment, you know, those sorts of things help my channel. I'm just a small channel. If you like my content in general, please hit subscribe, and take it easy and ride safe.